Kia ora, and welcome to this session on wealth accumulation. My name is Sue Stewart. I am an advisor and director of Medical Financial Advisory Services. We are affectionately known as MFAS because it's too much of a mouthful otherwise. Anyway, in today's session, we are going to look at what assets you may already have available to you and what you may be able to do in the future to make sure that your financial strategy is as strong and as robust, but also as flexible and liquid as possible over the years between now and retirement. So let's get underway. I'm going to share my screen, and we're just going to look at a example which we will construct as we go along. So here we go. Today I have Jane in front of me. Jane is currently 32 years old, and she is on the anaesthetist training program. Jane has suggested that she'd like to retire at the normal age of 65, and she's looking to make sure that her retirement years or retirement time horizon lasts until for 25 years, until she's aged 90. So that means that she's looking for, when she does retire, she wants to be able to depend on that income until she's aged 90. Jane has a moderate risk profile, which we can assess with her, and we can also test with some resilience testing along the way as well. So now, while this is looking at retirement, what we're actually doing today is looking at different ways of wealth accumulation and how these assets can be built up over time. So obviously one of the very important aspects is salary, and Jane is currently on $105,000 per annum, which gives us a net amount of just $3,000 per fortnight. We're going to assume right now we can choose. We could keep pace with inflation, but for now we're going to assume that Jane's salary doesn't increase. But this is obviously something we will come back and regularly review and monitor with Jane. But for now, we're going to just assume that she's on $105,000 right now. And her tax rate is 28%, because within any investment structure that we would recommend, a high tax rate applies of 28%. Okay, so now when it comes to retirement, for now, Jane is happy to assume that 70% of her current net income will be sufficient throughout her retirement, which is what the Retirement Commissioner has suggested as being appropriate for New Zealanders. This is something that is completely random and completely up to each individual client, and we have obviously large variations on that. Jane is 32, so she has chosen not to include New Zealand Super. We believe that at her age, that's an appropriate step. But if we did include New Zealand Super, that would obviously decrease the amount she needs to accumulate. Over on this side, it's telling us that $2,100 now that she's looking for will actually be worth $4,000 per fortnight by the time she retires. So that is the effects of inflation. As you can see down here, the wealth target for her retirement therefore becomes $2.5 million. But again, Jane isn't really focusing on that retirement figure. It's just good to have in the background. But let's have a look at the building steps that Jane can do to accumulate wealth. The first and foremost one is obviously KiwiSaver. Now, Jane is DHB employed. And being an anaesthetist, she's likely to always be DHB employed. She may also get work, obviously, in private practice. And Jane just has a balance of $10,000 at the moment because she bought her own home using her KiwiSaver last year. Because she is with DHB, she is contributing 6% because the DHB will match that. So starting from close to zero, her contributions are 6 and 6. By the time Jane retires, her KiwiSaver is expected to have a valuation of about 1.48 million. Now that is a really good start on the way to her long-term plans. KiwiSaver is a long-term investment. It is locked in. She's used the funds for a house, so now she cannot access them again until Jane is 65. So therefore, being in a growth fund right now would make a large amount of sense. If Jane was in a default scheme or a conservative scheme, her balance would not get anywhere close to that amount. So you do need to make sure that your KiwiSaver, you need to look after your KiwiSaver, keep an eye on it, and also always make sure that you're appropriately invested for your age and time frame. So now we'll look at property investments. Okay, so as we just said, Jane owns her own home, which she purchased last year. Valuation of $750,000, and she has $450,000 mortgage left. The software is great, but it has not allowed for the fact that interest rates are going to be as low as they have been at the moment, or they are at the moment. So 4% is the lowest we can go down to, but that's all good, erring on the side of caution once again. And Jane is repaying her mortgage at the moment at the rate of $1,000 a fortnight. So this is going to tell us that Jane's mortgage will be repaid in 30 years because she's paying back $26,000 per annum. Now we have a little magic button over this side, which is called a mortgage pledge. Now this is where Jane promises just to herself that once her mortgage is completely repaid, then she will contribute all of what she was contributing to the mortgage to her long-term savings. So that's 3 years worth at 83 or 84,000. Obviously, we can go through the numbers and say, well, what if she increased your mortgage repayment? How does that look? But for now, Jane is happy with paying $1,000 a fortnight and just knowing it will be, her debt will be repaid before she retires. Right, so those two assets, both KiwiSaver and property, are actually very fixed. They're not, it's not as if you can draw funds down in case you have an emergency or you want to take up an investment opportunity or perhaps buy another property. So Jane also is very keen to start a investment program as well. And for that, she's looking at saving $500 a fortnight. So again, over time, that's going to build up really solidly and be worth about $1 million to Jane. Now, Jane may well use those funds at some stage along the way, but at least it gives her a pool of assets that gives her options, it gives her liquidity, flexibility, which is really important. And it's a term that has been coined just over the last couple of months with COVID, has been financial resilience. So that is where the regular savings program, on top of the mortgage repayment and on top of KiwiSaver, really makes a lot of sense. We can also have a look at any future sums. Jane doesn't have any applicable to her, but perhaps things that might be included here might be an inheritance, sale of a property, taking equity out of a property, sale of a future sale of a practice, if Jane went into a practice and then sold it, etc. So all sorts of options can come in here. We also have an option of an existing portfolio. So if clients have bank deposits, for instance, or already have an existing share or bond portfolio, then we can add these assets in here and work out how that's going to affect their long term as well, their wealth accumulation. Now, none of those are applicable to Jane. She is just starting out on her investing career. So we're going to flick across to the outcome page. So this is telling us that Jane is actually on track to meet her long-term objectives of 70% of her current net income throughout a 25-year period. And so that would take her up until she's 90. This graph here, the green bars are KiwiSaver, essentially, and then the black, grey and blue lines are the more flexible savings strategy and how those investments might be invested, and how they all make up the part to get to her long-term target over here. Here is the property, Jane's property. Now at this stage we're not allowing for any property release, equity release, but you can see her $750,000 house is basically expected to double. That is only from the effects of inflation but over the next 33 years. So that is only inflation adjusted. We're not trying to guess what property market's going to do over that period. So if we come back down here again, so as you can see, the KiwiSaver is close to $1.5 million. The mortgage pledge, where she was going to promise that once her mortgage is repaid, she'll start saving that money as well. Regular savings scheme, it takes her close to $1 million. So what this is showing, I hope, is that by starting early and doing quite small amounts, you can get a very, very long way ahead in the future. And what's really important for Jane is that this will need to be reviewed. We always monitor, review and report back to all clients. And obviously, Jane's investment plan, it will need to be updated as her career develops, perhaps as she changes lifestyle, her expectations may change, all sorts of things will happen over time. And so this is a really good starting point, but it is a moment in time, and it is really important that on your wealth accumulation journey that you do always keep it updated and work out where to next. Just to make sure that you do remain on track, because that gives you the confidence to stay the course when we have market positions like we have over the last couple of months, which have been a roller coaster ride. So that's it from me for this session. Linda Taylor, our risk specialist, will do another session following this, because of course Jane's position and long-term position is completely reliant on her ability to earn an income. So therefore, ensuring that income, protecting that income is going to be vital for Jane over the short and long term. So if you would like to go through this process with your own situation, we are more than happy to do that with you. We'd enjoy meeting with you, and all meetings like that are of course free of cost and no obligation. So we do hope to hear from you shortly, and thank you for joining me today. Thank you.